When you have to shoot, don't talk.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another Trap House podcast. My name's Justin Jett. I'm going to sit down here with Charlie, and we're just going to talk about all kinds of little topics, obviously all trapping related. Everything from stuff to do in cold weather, sets freezing up. We've got a couple books we're going to talk about. We got a couple trips we're getting ready to go on. We're going to talk about those. And, just some odds and ends. But first, we got to say thanks to the sponsors. Top Lot Stretcher Company. Check out their website. That's toplotstretcherco.com. They make the adjustable stretcher that we always talk about and support. But they have a whole line of trapping supplies, so you can go through their website, check their store out. Stuff for skinning and fleshing. They have some really nice push pins that they sell. You just surf their website, check it out. And also Hags Bracket. Jeff Haggerty supports us, and we support him, maker of the Hags Bracket there. His website is j3o.com. Check out their line of stuff. They got numerous great products, all American-made, good stuff. Thank you, Jeff, for the support. Also, we have Weeby Knives, their website, weebyknives.com. Several knives to choose from, some with replaceable blades, fixed blades. They got this new setup for deer hunters. It's got bone saw in there with a gut hook and a couple other knives with it. And very reasonably priced, quality knives too. Can't say enough good about them, and I'm glad we have them on board. Also, got to say, last but not least, thanks to Hoosier Trapper Supply, supporting this podcast and getting this thing off the ground. Our website is HoosierTrapperSupply.com. It's the maker of Top Dog Predator Bait and Jet Fuel Predator Lure. We got trapping kits, everything you need in the trapping field, as well as deer scent. We do some taxidermy too, so if you're local or want to try us out, you can look us up, give us a call. All right, I think that covers it. Let's dive into the conversation. All right, we got another podcast here, The Trap House. This is the Trap House behind us, by the way, if anyone was wondering. We got a lot to talk about, don't we, Charlie?
So, I mean, we get these calls occasionally and said, you know what the Trap House reference is? And it's like, well, yeah, but we think we own it. We don't.
We're more important than the other.
Yeah, the underground doesn't own it. So, whatever.
The first shed, the Trap House. I'm pretty sure those terms were here way before.
Yeah.
The modern day use of the term.
Yeah.
Well, what are we going to talk about? We're going to Kansas.
Yep, we're heading to Kansas. Keeps getting delayed because we're so busy here. So we hope to get out of here later this week. And head to Kansas. Do some trapping out there. Our buddy Mike Huber, who we've done a podcast with before.
Yeah.
Big time coyote trapper, big time trapper, period. And he's one of those guys that doesn't make a line of lures, doesn't write books or have DVDs or do anything on YouTube. He is just a really good trapper and puts up some really big numbers. And I mean, he works very hard at it. He does it this time of year. He does it full time. So, but anyways, he kind of helped us out a little bit out in Kansas with a place to stay and some ground and whatever. So, looking forward to that. He says that he's been out there for 2 months almost, or a long time, 6 or 7 weeks. So
we're hoping he saves us some critters, because he told me on the phone how many he's caught, and I was like, "What about us, Mike? Invite us out here to try." He said he left us all the smart ones. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So, but he said it's like bone dry out there.
Yeah, Charlie's trapped Kansas. I have not, so this is new experience for me. I'm really looking forward to it. Obviously, coyotes will be the main target there in that area. They got good, and then also the bobcats.
And hopefully we catch some badgers.
Yeah, we haven't really necessarily been in the perfect spot to catch badger. I mean, there's always been some potential when we were in New Mexico, and I would think this prairie setting would be a little bit better. Mike's caught like 6 or 7 last time I talked to him.
I mean, it's
That
not.
was a week ago. So.
Yeah, it's not. It's funny that a lot of trappers that live in badger country don't want to catch them.
Yeah.
But being from Indiana, where there aren't any around here to speak of, and there's some in northern Indiana, but we don't have a season. So, anyways, it'd be cool to catch one. So
Yeah.
they dig a crater. I always thought about badgers when they're digging, you'd think they could just dig the stake out, but they always dig away from themselves. They don't dig where the stake's at. So,
Yeah.
but I'm sure a lot of you have probably seen those pictures where guys catch badgers and there'll be like a giant crater that they've dug, and the badgers look down at the bottom, looking up. So
There's also what looks like we'll probably have some run-ins with some skunks.
yep.
So
I bought a pole today. I forgot to tell you, I bought a pole for a skunk sleeper. So,
be putting the syringe to the use there.
yep. I think years ago, when I trapped Kansas originally, it was just Jake and I. And Jake was quite young, so I think he was in 2nd or 3rd grade was when the first time we went. And we went, I could have told you any other time, 3 or 4 years in a row we went to Kansas. And had a great time. Where we're going this time is actually it's 100 or so miles away from where we were at, so it's further west. But great memories with that trip, and I think a lot of that was just Jake being young and never doing that kind of thing, and just had a great time, great experience. First time I ever caught a bobcat, I don't know, just a really good time. I actually did catch a badger, not the first year out there, but one of the years out there. That's the only time. I think that's the only badger I ever caught. So,
yeah. It's funny because even though it was that long ago, I was still around. Actually, I was dating your daughter at the time. Now
Yep.
married, obviously.
Yeah.
But I remember when you guys would call home on the kitchen phone. This is still when people use landlines quite often versus cell phones.
yeah.
Pre-flip phone, even probably.
Yeah, I had I was like,
But I remember calling and talking to you guys out there, and you just were having so much fun. Jake was having a blast, and I was kind of jealous.
yeah.
I was wanting to go, and
And the sad thing
finally came. It's
Yeah.
finally coming.
Yeah, you get to go. So the sad thing now is that Jake can't go, so it's not going full circle. So, that's actually really sad. It doesn't seem right for him not to be going at all. But his story, or what's up with him, is we typically leave a couple days after Christmas, and because of being very busy in here, we're just not able to get out. Very difficult to get out of here. We just put it off, and he's going to be starting school at the same time that
Yeah. Back to school and work, so.
Right, and he's got a 4-day-a-week schedule. He's an electrical engineering degree, so it's not something that he can just walk away from for a few
2 weeks or whatever.
yeah, and come back to and try to catch up. So we're sad that he's not going to be able to go, and I know he's not very happy about missing it. So, anyways,
I won't call him and rub anything in. I'll act like I'm having a bad time.
yeah.
It's just to make him feel better.
I'll tell you a story on Jake when we were out there years ago, and when you're out there, and we would always go in February because we trapped on bird hunting lease ground. So, I mean, you could have 70-degree days, or you could have just nice days, or you could have nice seasonable winter days, or we had some brutally cold weather, and the wind's always blowing out there. And I remember it was like 3 degrees, and we were on a 4-wheeler, and Jake always, he always wanted to drive the 4-wheeler, and normally I would let him, and I just ride behind him. And and I remember it was so cold, he didn't want to drive the 4-wheeler. He wanted to ride behind me. So I remember just being, well, all of you that have been out in that kind of weather on a 4-wheeler knows what that's like. But it was it's just funny that I could drive that day. So anyways.
Tears coming down your face.
Oh yeah, it was
bitter
cold. It was cold. So
speaking of cold weather, our next topic has to do with that.
yeah. So one of the questions that came in, a guy was in South Dakota, or one of the Dakotas, South and North Dakota. And I know you guys up there have had a pretty good cold snap. Your ice fishing and everything. And down here we've been the opposite. It's been very mild, lots of rain. And The guy said, "Hey, want to know if Top Dog worked in cold weather?" And I said, "Yeah." He said he was using my, basically kind of my hybrid flat set with the bait underneath the rock, buried underneath the rock, and of course the rock was freezing to the ground and whatever. So my suggestion was, I said, yeah, Top Dog definitely works in cold weather, but I said you might actually try to get a dirt hole in the ground, which can be very difficult when the ground's that frozen, or at minimum, get the rock away, or make a, maybe even make it just a little cubby with the rocks or whatever. You can use that pipe set or whatever too. Just some way to get that bait so that it wasn't buried or that far below the surface of the ground with that rock on top.
You could use a smaller pebble-sized rock to prop up the big rock.
Something, yeah, just
to create just enough space to let airflow travel.
Right, and then pull that bait. Maybe literally, if you're going to do that, I would pull the bait literally on the surface of the ground, so the animal would be more likely to smell it or whatever. And then I put some urine on top of that rock and some little bit of lure, would definitely help. But cold weather suppresses smell. That's why when you taste something, typically it'll taste better at room temperature than it will cold, or so obviously it depends on what it is, but cold suppresses smell. And when then the ground is frozen, you've got very cold air, you got very cold ground, and then if it's covered up, so it's a lot there to expect that lure or bait or whatever to reach out over above that type of condition. So yeah, that was my suggestion. The other thing is just a general, and I've said it a number of times, but a general rule of thumb is, as the season progresses, as the ground cools off, as the things get colder, then you just, if you didn't know anything, basically the stronger the smell or lure, you just keep ramping up for cold weather. So when you get to really cold weather, you want the really strong smelling stuff. I mean, you can be using the skunk stuff, or you can just use the other strong smelling lures. Mm-hmm. And even if you get a mild spell, the ground is still super cold, and typically the lure's on the ground, and of course at night it'll cool off a fair amount. So it's not a big deal to use that stuff when it gets cold, and I would definitely be using it when it gets cold, the strong stuff. The other thing is, and I've seen it in the snow, where coyotes are just rolling on your sets and whatever, and that's what you kind of want to avoid, but sometimes you can't. But that's kind of the downside to something being super strong. But I would get the strong stuff out for the cold weather and later season trapping. So
yeah, even if you're using the milder type lure, wouldn't you just apply maybe more?
You could put more down.
Just the amount you actually use could help with that.
Right. And that's a really, you brought up a good point. So if you're making a remake,
mm-hmm.
say you caught a coyote or a fox, badger, whatever, hoping we'll catch a badger, and you got the smell of that animal right there. And so when you go to remake that set, then the milder lure is just fine, because that animal, it's got that set.
He just lured it for you.
Exactly. So the mild lures in our line would be like, I would consider black gold pretty mild. I would consider our coyote carnage pretty mild. Our early scene is very mild. Early season predator is very mild. So, but the coyote carnage and the black gold would both be good remake lures in very cold weather, because you got all that other stuff working for you, and those are completely different than anything that the animal could leave at the set. So you've got the oddball curiosity smell along with that animal smell. So I think that's probably something I would consider.
Yeah,
so.
I use a lot of coyote carnage for remakes.
Yeah,
that's probably my go-to out of all the ones we offer.
Yeah, I mean in the milder weather or whatever, it's a go-to to start with, and then for remakes, yeah. So catch them on jet fuel and then remake with coyote carnage.
Double whammy.
Yeah. Think of anything else you want to say on that, Justin?
No, I think that pretty much covers that topic.
I mean, if you remember anything at all, just remember, as it gets colder, the lure gets stronger. I mean, that's just kind of the bottom line. So, you just need that to reach out. So
I will say, this is not necessarily about cold weather, but weather in general. If it's extremely rainy, I like using some of our thicker type lures.
yeah,
Misty rains, the jet fuels like that. It's got an oily residue that wants to just hang on there. And black gold's like that too. It's kind of gelled up. Great for rub sets too, for cats and that sort of thing. But I like those two because they're one of our thicker type lures that work great in rainy situations. I think they just hold on a little longer.
right.
But other than that, as far as weather goes, yeah,
Yep.
time of year and weather conditions
Right.
is kind of what I determine on what I'm using at the set.
Now, on the other, on some lures, I don't know that we have anything that would have this issue or that problem, but I've seen some lures that'll use like a petroleum jelly type base or whatever, and when you use them in, we don't do that, but when you use those in cold, windy weather, sometimes they'll actually crust over. So then you got to be, they're not putting as near as much smell out, so you actually got to
Break it.
That lure. But so yeah, I mean, it all depends on what you're doing. And then if we're in Kansas, we're going to have evidently it's been super dry, so we will actually probably maybe soup up the urine a little bit with some glycerin to keep evaporation a little bit more under control. Obviously, you still got the residue of the smell, but I think it'll hold up better if we put a little more glycerin in the urine, just to help with that semi-arid air, very dry air. So and very dry ground. So I think it'll hold up. I'm thinking about,
Or go straight to our predator gravy.
I'm thinking about even on the top dog, even though it's quite moist when you put it down the hole. If we're making dirt hole sets, actually just giving a shot of propylene glycol or glycerin right on top of it, just to help keep it more moist. I don't know if that's going to be necessary or not, but it's just something I was kind of thinking about. So
Definitely won't hurt.
yeah, no, it won't hurt a thing. So, I mean, well, you know how like top dog, if it gets a rain on it, and it's actually standing, it's even better. So it's kind of what I was thinking. So
Pulling cable stakes.
pulling cable stakes,
Everyone's favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
Pulling stakes.
It's like that's why we cut them fairly often. But yeah, I mean the perspective on stakes, cable stakes, is all over the place. We've talked about this before. I mean, you got high end, like Fox Hollow and that kind of thing, chain stakes, whatever, clear down to the basic Berkshires, which I'm basic Berkshire user, because if I cut that stake, I don't feel like I'm leaving much in the ground, and I know that will rust, go away pretty quickly environmentally. If it's very small, anyways. But we talked about using a tile spade, and we talked about prying them out with pry bar, the stake pullers that we sell, all work, that kind of thing. And the other day, the guy had made a mention that he takes his auger on his drill and just goes right beside his cable on both sides, just runs it down, and that loosens that up. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention that as a follow-up, because we had talked about that before. So, if not everybody reads the comments below the video, so just to put that out there,
Right.
I think that's a good one. If anybody else has got any other suggestions, please let us know. As I've mentioned in the past, there's guys that pull them out with a
Four-wheelers and
four-wheelers
trucks
and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
But just make sure you check your hardware after doing something like that, because sometimes something else might fail before the actual stake.
Right. Yeah.
Depending on where you hook it and the angle and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
Guy said he had something just go whizzing by his head, and I don't know if it was a pre-bent rib, a J hook or something. It's like,
Put an eye out.
yep, kill you out on the pulling trap stake. So yeah, be very careful, because there is a lot of torque there's a lot of holding power in a cable stake. So
Yeah. And that's where I'm at. Same place with Charlie on that. I'd rather have medium to low end range on the stakes, so we cut a lot of them and leave them. I try and dig up what I can, but
yeah,
if the ground's super hard, I'm not wasting my time or my energy. So
and
just cut it and go.
And they hold. The cheaper ones hold just fine.
Oh yeah.
And like any cable stake, when you get it in the ground, goes in vertically, go pull it to horizontal. Any of them will. I mean, when it gets in there whether it's going to hold or not. And if you're in question, just run another cable stake and double stake with it. But yeah, those Berkshires hold just fine. There's nothing wrong with those for coyote trapping in almost all conditions. So
Yeah. Everyone's favorite set to make is a tire set. We talked about this.
we got several comments about this.
Yeah, the follow up on the tire set conversation we had.
It was kind of funny. Gus says, "Yeah, I was tired of looking at that trash out in the field. I just couldn't deal with it." That was funny. One guy said, and you took this one. You can talk about that, about the cows. He said,
"Oh yeah. Someone made a great point, and I'm with him on it. If you've ever trapped in an area where there's cattle running, and they're a pest, they'll find your set, they'll stomp on it, they'll mess it up. It's hard to keep them out of it." A guy suggested online that he does the tire set, traps in the center of the tire, and that actually helps keep the cows out of it. At least they might stick their head in there and smell it, but they're not going to be stomping in there most likely to set it off. So
I don't know, you guys that
we'll have to try it out.
Have some experience with that, let us know, because cattle ranches that I've been around, a lot of times they take the salt blocks and put them inside the tires for the cows to lick on or whatever. So that doesn't mean the cow's standing in it, but I'm not so sure that.
Yeah.
So.
He'll still want to check it out.
Yeah.
But I don't think he'll fire it necessarily.
Yeah, I don't know. So we could use some follow-up comments on that if anybody wants to make a comment about it. So, one guy mentioned, he goes, "Yeah, if you're buying tires and making tire sets, you could probably go on an elk hunt cheaper."
That's true.
Yeah, which is a good point. So,
what about the triangle set?
So we put up a how-to video. It's probably been a month ago.
Yeah.
About how to make a triangle set. Hopefully, a lot of you watched that. It's on the how-to section of the YouTube page. How to make a triangle set. Basically, it's a trap, and then there's 3 points that you dig in the ground and put your attractant in there. So you can put lure in. You can put lure in one, lure in the other, and bait in one, or 2 baits and 1 lure, or whatever you want to do. Any combination.
Sheep's wool stuff down in a little hole.
Yeah, and we just pushed. Yeah, and we were taking the hole, for those of you that saw, we took the holes and dug them with the disposable stake driver. So it's small. You can use a piece of rebar. Push the lure or bait down in there, and actually push those holes back shut. So there was no visible hole, no dirt hole, no. It was basically a flat set with 3 attractant points, essentially, is what it is.
And I will say it's a great set for people trying to be discreet on location, visible. As long as you go in and do all the extra blending, even a trapper walking by might not necessarily know there's a trap there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those that we've gotten out, got out of the truck on blended flat sets, and you're like scratching your head exactly where the set is, particularly if there's not an animal in it, so. Because you're within 5 feet of it or 10 feet of it, but if it's blended, sometimes it's like, where is it? Somebody, anyways, had mentioned, it's like, why are we covering the holes back up? And I mean, you could leave them open, but then you're kind of in the realm of a dirt hole, or maybe, and then you're digging the hole a lot deeper, I think, that kind of thing, and maybe even eliminating some of the advantage of that type of set. So the animal can clearly smell it. We just kind of talked about that just a minute ago about really cold weather. If it was super cold, I wouldn't put that stuff down very deep. But the animal can smell it, particularly if it's if you're not dealing with freezing cold conditions. They have no problem smelling that at all. So So it's just a blended flat set. Anyone walking by is not going to know that there's a trap there. Or you can go to that length, and then go.
Yeah, there's some. We call it triangle set. There's other names for it. People were listing, but I don't remember what they all were.
3-punch set,
3-punch hole set, or something,
stuff like that. But
yeah,
I mean, that one
triangle of death set.
One guy said he's been using it for 30 years, and he said very rarely does he ever see anybody demo it or show it or whatever. He was in So, and unlike the old days when somebody would say, get mad that you showed their set, this guy was like, "Oh, glad you showed that because that's a good set. I've used it for years very successfully." Which reminds me, back in the 70s and 80s, the guys were tight-lipped about telling anything, and were not crazy about
Can't be
telling their secrets.
You tell your secrets, you create.
Your competition.
Yeah.
and there was lots of competition back then, so I kind of got it, and there was money involved, which makes people crazy, and so it was.
I think we should rename the set the Bermuda Triangle.
Oh, the Bermuda Triangle.
There we go.
There we go.
Sucks in all the coyotes.
Yeah.
They get lost.
Yeah, because it's going to be like a nightmare for them. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Maybe it will take off. Well, it's cold, so a lot of people are dealing with freeze-up issues.
Right.
How would you deal with it?
So here, yeah,
several ways to go about these things. But
so here in Indiana, we've had super mild weather. Excuse me. We've had super mild weather. We've had a lot of rain. Flooded creek type rain, flooded rivers type rain. It's been challenging in that respect. Now it's kind of turned off cold. It's a little more seasonable. We're still only talking, 20 at night. It's not like it's 0 or something. But the ground's freezing up. So in this conditions, you can get a dirt hole dug or a flat set dug. The ground's not concrete yet, So particularly if you wait until the afternoon because the sun hits it or whatever, it's thawing out,
Right.
It doesn't stay frozen all day.
When it gets cold, that's when you know where the real trappers are.
Yeah.
Because everyone else gives up and goes home and, drinks hot chocolate.
And sometimes I don't blame them.
Yeah, sometimes, But the whole thing with trapping is obviously, you're always worried about you got to have the best bait, you got to do this and locate. All that stuff's very important, but if your trap is not functioning, none of it matters. It doesn't make a difference. So this is like one of those key things this time of year. Keep your trap functioning, and several ways to go about it. What's your preferred method, Charlie, that you think works the best?
I think overall, wax dirt is ultimately the best, but we never get enough made, or we never take the time to get enough made. It's it's time consuming, and to make quite a bit of it is fairly involved. I mean, it's just in time, and of course you got to go dig the dirt and all that, and you got to be careful where you dig your dirt. You don't want a lot of vegetation in it. You've got to be careful with it. And in that way, the solar method, with the sheet of plastic laying out in the sun on a 85, 90 degree day, that works quite well, and you don't have to worry about, burning the dirt or scorching the what dry vegetation might be in the dirt with a torch on a cement mixer, that kind of thing. So, so yeah, wax dirt I think is ultimately the best.
Right.
As most people know, when they watch us, we use a lot of cover holes, a lot of buckwheat holes.
We do.
They work great in mud, and they work great in freezing weather, both. And we've left them both exposed, and then we generally
some light blending
on top. So if you light blend on top and you've got wax dirt, great. If you don't have wax dirt, just try to get you some relatively dry dirt, and if it's a little moist, just put the pattern on very, very light. If you put it on too heavy on top of the coveralls, the dirt, and then it gets wet and freezes up or whatever, you're literally taking cookies and pulling it off the top of those buckwheat hulls.
You have a big crust like that, and it's easy to remove, and you could still catch a coyote if it can break through it, depending on how thick that cookie is.
Right. But I mean, when you do that, it shows you how well those buckwheat hulls work.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You got that cookie of what once was relatively dry dirt that got wet, frozen in the shape of a cookie that might be it shouldn't be a quarter inch thick, but an eighth of an inch thick or whatever. And you just pull it right off there. The coveralls are fine underneath it. So, so this fall, you guys, you'll see the semi-live. The first semi-live comes out right
Yeah.
before this podcast.
Yeah, it's already out. If you're watching this, it's out.
Yeah.
So first day of semi-live has been released.
I think you titled it "Farmland Coyote Trapping."
Farmland coyote trapping. That's right.
So, episode 11, right?
12.
Episode 12.
And what's cool about this, I don't think we've done this in the past. Like Charlie was saying, we don't usually come up with wax dirt very often. It's just something we probably need to take more time and do. But this time around, we actually had access to both wax dirt and coveralls, so we actually combined the two. And I thought that worked pretty good as a combo.
Right.
Because, to make wax dirt, like we said, time-consuming, and it's kind of pricey.
If you buy it.
If you buy, I think a 20-pound bag here that we're...
Yeah, it's $26.95.
$26.95 for a 20-pound bag. I mean, you can still get a handful of sets out if, you're not too generous with it, But I think bedding it down and the best you can with what's there with the coveralls and then just coming over the top with the wax dirt worked pretty good.
Right.
Because it give it the blend look. It's going to hold the coveralls down. Got both working for you. If, say, for whatever reason, if the wax dirt doesn't shed properly, it would go right through those coveralls.
Right.
If you didn't have it properly.
If you didn't use enough of it.
If you didn't use enough,
Heavy
yeah,
it
would go. It would continue on through. And
right. Coveralls, unless they're standing in water, they work great. I mean, it freezes. If they're standing in water, literally standing in water, then they're going to freeze.
Yeah.
But if you had anything standing in water is going to be an issue. So
I love coveralls just as much in mud as I do cold weather.
Same here.
Just because trying to sift mud and pack it, and it's just a mess. You lay that down and almost kind of mix the two together, so it's to some degree, and that will give you some substance there to actually bed the trap well still, instead of just light coveralls by itself.
Right.
That helps, and man, I don't think trapping would be near as much fun messing with that mud.
No. Well, and coveralls are lightweight, so when you're carrying around, you can carry around a 4-gallon bucket of it, and it's nothing. It just doesn't weigh anything. So they're light and fluffy. So they're really nice in that respect.
It's true.
Carrying around 5-gallon bucket of wax dirt's quite heavy, so you're not going to carry it that much around when you're traveling. But still, it's quite heavy. So I think the combination of the two is perfect, or as close to perfect as you can get. There's nothing perfect, but then a lot of people use peat moss, and we've used peat moss, and it's a good inexpensive cover.
Yep.
There's always this debate: do you sift it or you don't sift it or whatever? To play it safe, always sift it, because there's a lot of roots and debris in peat moss. Depends on how clean it is or how pulverized it is.
And you might, if you buy that wherever you go, whatever farm store,
Lowe's or Menards,
Lowe's
or garden centers.
99% of that time that stuff's stored outside, and if it's not covered properly, there's still going to be quite a bit of moisture in that. So if you do get it ahead of time, you could always sift it out early and let it air out in the garage or whatever beforehand if you're getting ready for season, to get ahead of it. Because some people would go right now in the dead of winter and get it, and it still might be pretty wet. You might as well just
make sure if you do buy it this time of year that it's under the roof.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it where you couldn't even pick that bale up. It would be so saturated with water, So, just make sure it's dry, obviously, if you're buying it right now.
Right.
So, and that's kind of hit or miss. It just depends on how they store it, at what store, So.
Right.
But then after so we're at wax dirt, then we're at coveralls, then we're talking about peat moss. And then after that, some guys back, years ago in the 70s and 80s, before the idea of wax dirt and before coveralls came out probably in the 80s, early 80s. So they've been around for a long time. Guys were just carrying dry dirt. So they'd be digging stuff up from underneath bridges or, barn or whatever, someplace that was well protected from the weather, and digging dry dirt. And I remember doing that. neighbors had a barn over here that was like a corn crib barn. You pull the tractor in the middle and 2 corn cribs on either side. You don't see those like you used to. But we dug a lot of dry dirt out of the bottom of that barn, out of the corn crib, under the corn crib. So, and it worked. It worked, but it only works to a certain point. So it doesn't work if it warms up during the day, and then you got from the ground up, the dry dirt is actually absorbing moisture. So
Yeah, that's pulling it,
yeah,
soaking it up.
yeah. So
So it's like a limited time deal.
right, right.
It might get you through one night, and you better check your trap the next morning, make sure that cover,
right,
or maybe reapply something.
right, and then it warms up and it rains, and then you're kind of back to
Square one.
yeah, yeah. So it's not it's heavy to carry around. It's a kind of a pain to get it, particularly in the wintertime, and it's only partially effective. So
Then you got to consider too, if you're digging dirt in a barn, did they have animals there?
yeah, is it going to be something that's going to be different than the smell wise?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that could be a plus
It
as
could-
far as a draw. They might be sniffing and be interested, but they might not want to necessarily step on it.
Or they might just be digging at it because
Or digging from the side.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're digging at it because they're curious. That smell, that doesn't really repel stuff so much. It's just the curiosity.
It's the curiosity. They just might not work that area the same way as if they didn't know it was there.
right, right.
Less likely to step, maybe roll, dig, or
Yeah, they're
walk
just,
around.
yeah. You don't want the attention on the trap itself. You want the attention on the where you put your attractant.
Right.
So, so yeah, it's kind of one of them things where you just want that dirt to be as clean as possible. It's kind of like the idea of we wear separate gloves when we're putting our lure and bait down. Started doing that just a few years ago. I used to just do it barehanded, and then you ended up wearing some of it or whatever. But using specific gloves to put your lure bait and urine down. If those so your set making gloves, you want to try to keep those as clean as possible, because you get that lure or bait on your trap. It's not that the animal's going to be scared of it or think there's a trap there. It's just that they're digging at it, and typically if something's digging at your set, then they're not going to fire the trap. So
Yeah. What else on that topic? I've heard guys going out and cutting grass clippings and using that as cover.
That's a good cover. That's a legitimate cover. Just be careful that you don't want something heavy enough that it's binding up your trap.
Yeah.
So cutting it with scissors or whatever is a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Grass clippings.
The famous hay bale set.
Just throwing hay out all over the place and
or the hay bale set where you set the corners and all that. So that set's fine. It's just
we've never done it.
Nah.
We should probably demo that one year.
well,
fun.
We don't do it, so I don't.
Oh, come on, Charlie. Let's have some fun.
But it's a legitimate winter set for sure.
Yes. Yeah, I know several guys that use that.
Yeah, it's just you got to buy a hay bale or straw bale. I would buy a straw bale and take it out and set off that, or if you can find one existing in the field already. But that's a maybe not the most practical set, but it's definitely a winter type set. So.
Yeah.
So when we can talk about antifreezes and that kind of thing. So we just typically we're using the cover hulls. We're using a little bit of dirt on top, the wax dirt or dirt on top of the set, and then we just use this table salt.
Yep.
Got your traps waxed, you're in good shape. It's not really going to create any issues. Does a good job. It's natural. No big deal. And it does a pretty good job keeping things from freezing up.
It does. Yep.
Then there's also calcium chloride, which you can get from a farm store. Unfortunately, a lot of times you got to buy big bags of it. And the problem with that stuff is it works quite well. It's the same stuff they would put. I guess they put it in tractor tires, but they use it on the roads or whatever, on your sidewalks. The problem with that is if you buy a big bag, it likes to absorb moisture and turn into a giant brick, particularly in the off season or setup, whatever. So if you bought a big bag, you want to try to get that thing sealed up the very best you can if you want to try to save it.
Yeah. Split a bag with your buddies or something.
Yeah, and I haven't bought it for years, so I don't even know how expensive it is. If it's it's probably like everything else, it's gone up quite a bit. Some guys buy that sidewalk ice melt stuff. It looks like little
Little pellet things.
Yeah, and use those for their trap cover. I'm assuming any of this stuff is better than not having a functioning trap, even though it's not ideal.
Yeah.
So
I don't necessarily like the look at the way that's set. Unless there's snow on the ground.
yeah,
Because visually it blends in better, but
Right.
I don't know. It's not to say that it wouldn't work
Right.
anyway, but just from my taste.
and then there's yawning tonight. Then there's propylene glycol, which is antifreeze. We sell it. Most Trapper Supplies sell it. You can dilute that up to 50% with water typically and get by with it. It's a lighter consistency than glycerin, so it's more recommended to use. It does make your set wet looking.
Yeah.
But that's another option for you. This is not available. Hadn't been available for years and years. But there was a guy that used to sell an antifreeze, and I'm assuming it was just like a propylene glycol. It would be about what it would have to be, but he had it in an aerosol can, and you could. Trapper Supplies sold it. I sold lots of it back in the
Really?
yeah, and he sold aerosol cans of this antifreeze that you would literally just spray on your set.
What happened to those?
I don't know.
Sounds kind of
Yeah, I mean, it was one guy that was kind of lining that up, and they weren't cheap, but a fox was $70 or a coyote was who knows what. I mean, some were really expensive. So,
you could get it to pay for itself.
yeah, oh yeah. But yeah, it was that was kind of the deal. I just happened to remember that. I hadn't even thought about that for years. But and we're talking 40 years ago when this was available. But somebody actually had an aerosol can of trapping antifreeze. Anybody else remembers that? You might put a comment down below. So, some of you old guys like me.
That was before my time.
Yeah, that was way before your time. Yeah, so I think that's generally covered it. But I mean, at this time of year, it can be quite challenging to keep sets working. So.
Now, you're an instructor at the Trappers College, and you work with EJ, and he demos a set there. Me being the media guy and being able to bounce around to different groups, I noticed he did one about cold weather sets, like extreme cold.
Yeah, that was just basic level on wax dirt.
And that was all wax dirt? Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, he was talking about.
I'm talking like ground so hard, concrete, like you're not getting a dirt hole in.
Yeah, 0 degree trapping or below 0 degrees.
And how was he attracting them?
I mean, he was using a lot of visuals, like flat sets, because you couldn't get a hole in the ground. So he was chipping out his trap bed with a chisel, and then getting his trap bedded the best he could, covering with wax dirt, and then he would just attach nail stuff down along this flat set.
That's
like
right.
a visual.
He was nailing down
anything from a
old
fox
bone.
foot to a beaver foot to an old T-bone, if you could get a T-bone nailed, in the ground, nailed down or whatever. Just some sort of visual, and then he'd pour his lure in that urine or whatever. So.
Gotcha.
So yeah, that.
So wax dirt's the winner on that one.
Oh yeah, that was
the most
that was
extreme.
Yeah. I mean, he's a big advocate for wax dirt, and I agree, it's the best. So, but you got to get it made. So, and he would make a bunch of it. I mean, he would make a bunch of it. So, he was in that time. He was referencing northwestern Iowa. That's where he lived. Now he lives in Wyoming. So, anyways, he's probably it might be milder where he's at now than where he was. Northwest Iowa. I'm not sure. I'm sure. That's not fair to say. I'm sure it's quite cold where he's at now too. It's probably drier though.
Yeah.
In Wyoming.
Speaking of EJ, a different EJ. Move on to the next topic here.
So there's a new book. Scott Doms. I think he moved to Ohio. But anyways, he writes these books on. There's lots of books written about the fur trade era. Hundreds of years ago, the exploration of this country, all the trappers that were involved in that. But I'm the modern day trapper, and I'm going to say I'm calling the modern day trapper being roughly early, around 1900, maybe a little bit before, up to present day. I'm calling those, modern day trappers. And so when I was high school or whatever, the famous guy, it was the first fox trapping book that I bought. It was just almost a pamphlet, but it's a book. I still sell it to this day. Fox trapping, and so that was by E.J. Daly, and this book Scott Doms wrote it, and it's a and I have not read it cover to cover, but it's an interesting book to look through. It's an interesting book to completely, I'll get it accomplished. But all the pictures and the stuff that, of his life, he lived from 1889 to 1973. So about the time that I was getting full swing into trapping, he had just died. So, quite famous. He's referenced often. Justin's generation, not so much. My generation, definitely. But I mean, obviously, you'd heard of him, and So, so this book on this historical account of EJ's life and information about him is in this book. It's got some awesome photos in the back, in the book itself, but on the back cover, he's up against a root wad, blowing over root wad in a river, holding muskrats, and there's just the photos alone are worth looking at. Old trappers' cabins in the Adirondacks and that kind of thing. So, they're on the website for those of you that liked that kind of stuff. Definitely would suggest it. The newest one that Scott has written, and there's several others of these that he's written too. I think he's written 5 or 6 of them. And the other one is that he just came out with is Arnold Unknown, and so Walter Arnold, another well-known trapper from that same type period. He lived from 1894 to 1980, so he been around a long time. 86 years he lived, and he's quite the outdoorsman. Lived in had a trapper's cabin up in Maine, that kind of thing. But he did a number of other things. So this is kind of a good account of his life. He just another very interesting person for that time period of these, what I'm calling modern day trappers. So they had the advantage of traps as they evolved. The equipment was better than what it was, 150 years ago. Traps have gotten better, every year since then. But anyways, very interesting books for those of you that like this type of history, and it's relatable because it's within a lot of what they did we can relate to. A lot of what they wrote about in their publications is the basis of what we still use today. I don't know that E.J. Daly was attributed to developing the dirt hole set. I don't know whether that's really true or not. That's kind of always been kicked around, and they may reference that in the book. I don't know, but
we'll have to read and find out.
Yeah, good. But anyways, just want to kind of throw that out there about these 2 books and the other ones that Scott has written. They're on the website, so.
Yeah, these will be fun. We'll have to do maybe once we get through them.
Yeah, we'll do
We did do a review on
one of Charlie Dobbins' books. Yeah,
Dobbins, and we had planned to do some more, but as you know, just crazy schedule and time
right.
But yeah, we'll definitely have to get back on track with those.
Yeah. So we'll get back from Kansas. We'll scramble around here for a few days trying to get things under whatever we need to do.
Yep.
The shop still goes while we're gone. I mean, we've got Andrea is here, of course, and Elaine and Tommy and my Angie, my wife's in and out, and then Jake.
He'll
be in and out too. Other than I'm not sure. 4 days a week of schools, he may not be around that much. I don't know. So, but the shop still goes on. So, but when we get back, we'll have to catch up on stuff, and then we're going to turn around and head to Arkansas. So this will be the latest we've ever gone to. No, we've been to Arkansas in February before.
Yeah.
So no, I was going to say it was the latest we've ever gone to Arkansas, but it's not. But anyways, it'll be in February when we go down there, later than normal.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how that. Last year we went to Arkansas a little bit later because we were super busy here, but we were still in January. But the big toms, the bobcats, the toms, were starting to move quite a bit, and we did well on bobcats. So
Yeah, that was actually our best trip.
ever,
Yeah, as far as cats are concerned, our best trip ever.
So yeah, we'll see if how that plays out this time, and obviously Kansas and Arkansas that we're filming both of those trips, and that will all be showing next season on Hoosier Trapper Outdoors.
Yep.
Season 11.
Season 11, man.
Yeah.
Time flies.
So, yeah, looking forward to doing that. Looking forward to bringing the footage for you guys. And Kansas will be completely new. So,
Yep.
anything else you want to talk about?
I think that pretty much wraps up this one. We've been on the rotation every other week of this podcast and Hoosier Trapper Outdoors being released. So I don't know how much longer we'll continue that, but until off season.
Yeah, I mean the last show for Hoosier Trapper Outdoors is the first Friday of March, I think.
Okay.
So we'll continue the podcasts probably a little while past that.
Oh yeah,
and then
we'll pick up some this summer and with some guests. We'll probably start doing some in person again. And
yeah,
we got I'm not going to say the name yet, but we do have a big name that might sit down with us, and
yeah,
they have agreed. And so we just need to figure out a time.
right.
So
Right.
yeah, should be fun.
So yeah.
Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.